going to do the first part, and then she's going to follow. Okay, so your financial management requirements are in the handbook. They start on page 7. It's only about 10 pages. I recommend that you make sure that you read them so you can avoid any findings later on or any problems with receiving funds. So you're going to want to maintain copies of everything, all of your source documentation. So anything that you provide to us or provide to anyone associated with a project, you need to keep copies. So you need to keep a copy of your invoices, your request for payment, a copy of your checks, your bank statements. Even if your bank statements have copies of your canceled checks that are sent back, when you pay your vendors, you want to go ahead and make a copy of the check before you give it to the vendor. That way, if we need it for any reason or when we go out to monitor, if your check is not cleared, you'll still have a copy of your check. Um, you need to maintain surety bonding or other fidelity insurance on all employees that are going to be authorized to sign checks for the program. And you need to make sure that the bonding is current. The LCDBG funding should be recorded separately in either capital projects or a special revenue fund. Some of you do your own accounting. Some of you have a CPA that does it for you. Make sure, again, that you read the financial part of the handbook and give that information to your CPA as well. And basically, we have to make sure that your funds are reported correctly, both when we go out to monitor and whenever we review your audit. So we need to be able to see that they were used for eligible activities and to clearly see that they were not used for ineligible activities. So, for example, general government or operating and maintenance expenses are not eligible. How many of you have more than one CDBG project funded through our office? Just a few of y'all? Okay. So in the past, we required that you have a separate bank account, separate non-interest bearing bank account for every project funded through our office. Because of all the funding that we're getting, and we have some people that have 3 CDBG projects, it gets a little complicated sometimes trying to do that. So we are now going to allow you to have to use the same account for more than one project, as long as the projects are CDBG funds from our office. So if you have 2 projects that are both CDBG projects, they receive the funding from our office, you can use the same bank account. You do still need to report it separately in your financial records, and it needs to be reported separately in your year-end audit. So again, the account has to be non-interest bearing. It needs to be used for all of your transactions, including your deposits and your payments to your vendors. You need to use pre-numbered checks, and all checks have to have 2 signatures, and you cannot pre-sign the checks. When you issue a check to your vendors, make sure you write the CDBG grant agreement on your check. If for whatever reason you cannot use a separate non-interest bearing account and you need to use your general or a clearing account, you have to request permission from us to do that. So we need to receive permission, a request in writing from you, and then we have to grant permission. If this is done, all of your invoices will need to be paid in advance. Your checks have to clear prior to you requesting reimbursement from us, and you still have to have separate financial statements. Okay. This is going to be in your packet of exhibits as well. It's the financial management questionnaire. This is basically going to become your financial policy for this project. So this form is going to list all of the financial functions and who is going to perform those functions. So you want to make sure that on the left-hand side, you have a name of the person. On the right-hand column, you have their title. The only exceptions to that would be in 1D, or who prepares the request for payment. Sometimes your consultant does that, so it is okay to use the company name for your consultant there. And also in J for who prepares your fiscal year and statements. If that's done by your CPA firm, you can put that there. In letter E for signs request for payment, you want that section to exactly match your authorized signature form. Remember, those signatures are for the people signing your request for payment. You're going to show those names and titles here as well. Again, minimum of 2 are required. We recommend more than 2. In letter H, you're going to list the people that are signing checks. Same thing, minimum of 2 required. We recommend more than 2. Those people in letter H are going to need to be bonded or covered by some type of fidelity insurance. So you need to, when you complete this form and send it, you need to send documentation of that insurance along with the form. On page 2, you're going to actually list the details of the insurance coverage that you have, your fiscal year and date, your most recent audit period, and then the name of the best person for us to contact if we have any questions about anything related to financial or about this form. Make sure that the form is signed and dated. Okay, so this is basically the information I just told you. You should have somebody at your organization that is able to apply generally accepted accounting principles, or you should have a CPA that's qualified to do that. If there are ever any changes to your personnel, this form needs to be updated. So at that time, you would send us a new form along with current bonding. Okay, and we go into a little bit more detail about the bonding. Make sure that if your certificate is not current, that you send us something to show that it's recently paid. So you need to send along with your certificate a current invoice and a copy of a canceled check. Make sure that we can see who is covered by the insurance. Some policies are blanket policies that cover everybody. Sometimes they cover all the employees, but not the elected officials. And sometimes there are position schedules, so they only cover certain people or certain positions. Make sure that we have all of that information. Okay, anytime that, so this information is going to be needed with your contract conditions. It's also going to be needed when we go out to monitor and anytime your financial management questionnaire is updated. Okay, audit requirements. If you receive, these funds are federal funds. So if you expend at least $750,000 in federal funds in a given year, including this and any other federal funds that you receive, then a single audit is going to be required. If your revenue was less, 75,000 or less, you're only going to need a sworn financial statements between 75 and 200,000. You'll need a compilation, 200,000 to 500,000, a review. And if your revenue is 500,000 or more, you're going to need an annual audit. Again, your CPA should be able to help you with that. Just make sure that they have the information from our handbook. It's your responsibility to procure or arrange for the audit, to prepare the appropriate financial statements, to provide the auditor with any information that they request or need, and to follow up promptly. If for whatever reason you do have to request an extension from the legislative auditor, make sure that you send us a copy of that approval so that we'll make that note and not be looking for your audit report. Our handbook contains an example of a chart of accounts. So like I said, you should have a separate capital projects or special revenue fund. This basically shows, and this is in your exhibits as well, it basically outlines what your account should look like. That's something that you can provide to your CPA. And then we also have an example in here of an income statement and a balance sheet that is approvable. Okay, make sure that all of your revenue and expenditures can be clearly seen by our office when we come out to monitor and look at your financial statements, and whenever we look at your audit report, that's going to need to be cleared. You're going to need to report each project separately. So if you have a Love Louisiana Outdoors project, if you have a public facilities project, those will need to be reported separately. And if for whatever reason funds are transferred out of your normal LCDBG fund or not reported separately, you're gonna need to let your auditor know that they're gonna be required to have a supplemental schedule in your audit report that shows an income statement and a balance sheet with the project funds separately. Okay, your audit is due 6 months after your fiscal year end date. If the legislative auditor does not receive it and you have not received an extension from them, then you're going to go on the non-compliance list. If you're on the non-compliance list, you cannot receive CDBG funds. Denise is going to go over the rest.
Hello, everyone. I gotta get a little excited. I'm about to talk about how y'all get your money. So now we're gonna talk about your request for payment. The request for payment form is in your exhibit handout. It can also be found on our website, and that is the link to the website. And your signatures on your form must match the authorized signature form that Janelle discussed. The signatures have to be exact. If they are not, we will not process it, and you have to send another form. If there are any personnel changes, a new authorized signature form and an FMQ or a financial management questionnaire is going to be needed. And we cannot approve any payment until those are certified and approved by our office. So when you send in your new authorized signature form and FMQ, we're going to need your bonding insurance and everything to review for us to approve. And here's the website. On our website, you go to grant management, and at the top, you'll see grant management forms, and request for payment forms is the first link. So this is what the form looks like, if you can find it in your exhibits. And we'll start going through each section. So your first section is A, and this is where you will put your name, your address, and your phone number. The second one is the date of the request. Please list all contract numbers in section C, all of them. If you have multiple contracts, we know you guys don't right now because you're starting, but if you have multiple contracts within your grant period, you will put all contract numbers that were given to you during your grant period. And also you put your program year and your grant rep. The request number, so whichever one you're on, 1, 2, 3, 4, whichever one you're on, you'll put that in box D. If you have to make corrections to your RFP, please put a letter behind it. Most of the time, if your grant rep is emailing you or calling you to tell you that you need revisions, we will tell you which letter to put behind your request form. Behind your request number. Make sure to put your federal employee ID number in box E, and the date in box F should be the date of the last date of the invoicing period. So if it's for admin, the last day of the month. So sometimes they do it for a whole month, 5/1/2022 through 5/30. Your date there will be 5/30. So in the next section, status of LCDBG funds, fill in the corresponding fields that apply when completing the RFP. Box 2, it asks about the different amounts of funding for your activity. So box A is, they have a list of different categories that we fund. You put your dollar amount in a category that corresponds with your grant. So if you have a water grant, you put it with water. If you have sewer, you put it with sewer. And then of our parks grantees, you'll put it in other. And the rest, B, C, and D, and E are all if it applies to your grant. If it does not apply, you don't put anything there. And then you total all the categories. And we also have a fiscal year 1 and fiscal year 2. So if any of your projects any of your construction, whatever you're requesting payments for, if some of their work is being done after June 30th, then that would be in a different fiscal year. So it just depends on how you need to ask. If you have questions, you can ask us, and we can tell you which category you need to put it in if you don't know. And then next, you will sign, date, and put your title. And of course, it has to match. And the persons that are signing have to match the people that you said could sign for request for payments on your financial management questionnaire. We approve it, and then once complete with section 4 is for us to write on, so you don't have to. But once complete, you will sign in blue, and then make sure you have 2 copies, and then email it to us. And we prefer 2 original copies. And your invoices have to be submitted with your request for papers. We don't want just a paper. We don't know. We gotta verify everything. We must identify the dates and the goods when they were received. And for our services and contractors, you must state the time period covered by the invoice, including the beginning and ending dates. And if goods are provided, the vendor must identify the items, the quantities, and how much they cost. For professional services, if they're not saying their task is complete 100, we need a breakdown. We need to know everything, what they did, the hours, and their hourly rate on the invoice. If it's not there, we're gonna ask for that, which could delay the processing of your payment. If other money is in your funding, so if you're paying with local funds, you will break down the amount that you're paying for local funds and the amount that's for CDBG. And when you process your payment, we approve it. OSREP, it goes to OSREP, they process. And so when you look, because we have a 3-day rule, once you get your deposit, you have 3 days to pay your contractor. So you can watch and monitor your deposits, and I'm going to show you how. On the Office of Statewide Reporting and Accounting page, this yellow box here says vendor information. You're going to click on that. Then at the bottom, you'll see vendor payments -legov. You'll click on that. You can't really see it, but it says vendor payment inquiry. You don't sign in, you just click that link. And then these corresponding fields, you'll put the date range, the vendor number, your federal ID number, and hit execute immediately at the bottom. And this is what it will look like when it comes up. So this example is for City of Westlake. They have 3 different payments. You click on one that is corresponding to the dates that you think. So if you had a payment that you sent in October, late October, then more than likely your payment will be early November. So if you can see the dates of the checks, so you can correspond and know which one to click on, I'm sorry. And it looks like this when it comes up. So it tells you the address, the business area, the vendor invoice, and it also tells you who paid it. So right there you see comments, it says CDBG. Another example of this is Kaplan. They have multiple payments. When you click on one, this is Homeland Security. So we know this is not the payment from CDBG. You go back out and you choose another option to verify if your payment was received and cleared. If RFP is processed on a Thursday afternoon, the money should be in your CDBG account the following Wednesday. When inspecting CDBG funds, like I said, make sure to monitor your bank account because you only have 3 business days to transfer or pay out to your contractor or professional services. If you do not, that is a finding. When we come to monitor, we look for that. Those are things that we look for when we're monitoring your financial management. Now we're going to discuss program income. Program income is gross income that is generated by the use of LCDBG funds. Any program income earned as a result of the program must be submitted to the state. You can call us and we will give you the instructions on what you need to do in order to send that payment to us. This is for parks only. If you have program income, you have to do Parks period has to do an annual reporting worksheet. It is due every year by January 31st during your project. And yours will be the first January after your authorization to incur costs. And you will be required to submit this worksheet for an additional 5 years after your grant is finally closed out. This is the form that it's going to be on it's on our website under CDBG CV forms, LLOP forms. This is what the form looks like that you will fill out and that you will send to OCD. And for our monitoring purposes, these are Janelle went over the different things that we require, but these are what we're going to look at when we come to monitor you. Your chart of accounts, your general ledger, your statement of revenues and expenditures, your balance sheet, all of your bank statements from the beginning of when you first drew, all of your bank statements, and documentation of current bonding for all the people that are authorized to sign checks, and your checkbook. We know a lot of people may not have physical checkbooks anymore, but we still want to see that log from your electronic checkbook. Do we have any questions?